Is the DMV housing market about to crash? Let's cut through the fear, the headlines, and the hype to expose the truth because it's quite a bit different than what you're seeing online. The chances are, if you've clicked on this video, you've got some serious questions about what's going on in the DMV real estate market in 2025, and is it about to crash? Many people assume that with higher interest rates, federal layoffs, tariffs, as well as cooling demand, that this is a repeat of 2008. But the numbers tell a different story. Home values are still firm. Inventory is still tight, and while buyer demand has softened some, it's still there. There are still more buyers in the marketplace than there are sellers. However, in spring of 2025, we're starting to see that balance out some. I've analyzed the latest data from Bright MLS, Redfin, Realtor.com, and what we found may surprise you. So let's dive into the 6 insights that will give you a full picture of the DMV market, whether you're considering buying, selling, or simply waiting. The first insight really is probably the most important one, and it's the one that everybody's ignoring. So while there's all this talk about a crash, the fact of the matter is home values are still rising throughout most of the DMV. Home values rose nearly 10% when we look at it year over year, February 2024 to February 2025. Bright MLS projects another 4.7% increase in home values in 2025. Once again, even with some slower sales, prices have not dropped and inventory still remains tight. So the news is for you home buyers, if you're expecting a huge crash in value, I think you're going to be waiting quite some time. The second key insight is while inventory is up, it's not up enough to satisfy demand. Every one of the people that you hear online saying there's going to be a huge surge of new inventory hitting the market, it's just simply not true. And yes, we're going to start seeing a lot more inventory hitting the market, but that's normal for the spring market. Currently in Montgomery County, Maryland, the amount of inventory is actually up 56% from the same time last year. And while that's a large increase, no question about it, right now there's about 1,400 homes on the market, but I want to kind of put that in perspective. That's 1,400 homes in all price ranges. That's townhouses, condos, single family homes in a county that there's over 1 million residents. That's still very low inventory, even though it is going up. One of the things that I'm seeing is the rise in inventory is due less to the fact that more people are listing their homes. There's this huge belief out there with the federal layoffs that all of a sudden everybody wants to put their homes on the market because everybody's out of work, nobody can afford their houses. Simply not true. There's actually not more inventory hitting the market. It's what we're starting to see is a market that's correcting, where homes are actually staying on the market a little bit longer. So instead of the majority of the homes selling within a few days, now we're starting to see that the average home right now in Montgomery County is taking about 3 weeks to sell. Still a short period of time, however, not as quickly as you would have seen last year or years prior. What we're still seeing throughout the DMV, and I'm sure other parts of the country as well, is what I call rate lock, where you have homeowners who actually would like to sell, whether that be they want to buy a bigger home, maybe downsize, move to a different school district, move closer to work, move further out, bigger lots. There's a lot of people who would like to move. However, they feel frozen into their property because they've got interest rates that are in the 3 to 4% range. Today's rates, we're looking at roughly mid to upper mid 6s. There's just a lot of people who, while they want to move, they're not going to flip out of a 3% to go to a 6.5%. They don't want to move that bad. So we're still seeing a lot of rate lock. If we see rates start to drop down, in my opinion, in the 5% range, 5.5% range, and they stay there for an extended period of time, I think you're going to start seeing many more of these home sellers who are going to say, you know what, close enough, let's go ahead, sell the house, let's make the move now. But still, we've got a lot of people who are really more frozen into their properties with low rates, and they're not planning to sell anytime soon. So for you buyers out there, while there is a little bit more breathing room, once again, there is a little bit more inventory on the market. By and large, homes are staying on the market longer. That's not always the case. I've definitely seen this spring where I've had situations where we've had 5, 6 offers on a house and it sells 10, 15, 20% over list price. But that's more the exception in this market than it is the rule, where it seemed to be the rule for almost 3 or 4 years. So you're still going to see that in some of the higher demand areas. Definitely homes that are well priced, staged well, in great condition. Those properties are still going to get a lot of attraction and a lot of attention. However, it's those homes that, maybe a little bit high in price, maybe not quite staged as well. Once they start staying on the market 2, 3, 4 weeks, where you as a buyer may be able to go in there and negotiate some better terms. The third key insight is the mortgage rate reality. Yes, rates are high, but they're not enough to break the market. And while today's rates are hovering right in that 6.5 to 6.75% range, while that is high when we take a look back 4 or 5 years ago, let's be honest, these rates have been in that 6.5 to even as high as 8% for the better part of 3 years now. So people have kind of gotten used to this is what the rates are. Now, I think we'd all love to see rates drop. However, if we start to see rates drop into that 5% range again, and certainly underneath that, you're going to see people flooding back into the real estate market, buying up properties and driving up values once again. And as I said earlier in this video too, if the rates start dropping down into that 5-ish percent range, you can expect as a buyer to see more inventory hit the market, because many of those people who have been frozen in with the low rates are going to come back out and say, you know what, now's the time to make the move. So as far as interest rates go, nobody's really predicting that they're going to be dropping down below 6% this year. Now, just about anything's possible, but I think what we can expect is the rates are going to stay right in that 6 to 7.25% throughout the year. Once again, to you buyers, when those rates do drop, expect to see buyers flooding into the market and values going up. As I like to say, and I don't like to be like Chicken Little telling buyers and sellers that the sky's falling. Once again, to you buyers out there, if you're qualified for a mortgage today, meaning that you're qualified to purchase, you can fit it within your budget. Let's be honest, everybody's feeling tight out there with inflation. Everybody's paying more for everything. I don't mean to be insensitive about it in any way. However, if you can qualify for the mortgage and you can still fit it within your budget, now probably is a good time. Lock in on the rate that you have, lock in on the price, because as I said, values are continuing to rise throughout the DMV. The great news is that interest rate that you have today isn't necessarily something you're committed to for 30 years or 15 years or whatever the life of the loan is. If interest rates drop down, they will at some point in time. Who knows exactly when and who knows exactly how much. But if interest rates drop down to a point where it makes sense, you can always have the opportunity to refinance and get your payment down. But yet, once again, if you can lock in today, probably makes more sense than to wait, allow home values to continue to rise, because that's working against you. Once you lock in and you own the home, then all those increases work in your favor and builds up equity into your home. The fourth key insight is while demand is not gone, it definitely has softened some. The news to home sellers is today you're probably going to have to get in there and compete more than you've had to do over the last 4 or 5 years, which simply means you're going to need to price in within the market. You're also going to need to make sure that the home is clean, that the home is well prepared, well staged, and of course you have a great real estate agent who knows how to market, who knows how to network your property. These things today are extremely important, and while, you know what, I always would say that they're important today more so than ever, because not everything's selling. Once again, it's great to be able to go in there right the first time with the house ready to go, and once again, buyers will be attracted to those type of homes. Right now, with inventory growing a little bit, buyers are becoming a little bit more choosy. So you know what? They may wait it out. Property that they may have jumped on last year because there was urgency, today they might say, you know what? I want to wait. I want to see if maybe that property value, the price will come down. I want to see other properties that come on the market. There's something to be said for doing it right the first time. And as we've all heard, you don't get a second chance to make a first impression. This is to all you home sellers. Key insight number 5, and I hear this all the time, that there's going to be this huge foreclosure and short sale wave coming through the DMV area. And I'm here to tell you that simply is not going to happen, not even close. The truth of the matter is the DMV foreclosure rates remain extremely low at about 0.26%. That's actually 1/4%, so very low right there. The reason why it's low, and the reason why I do not expect to see any type of tsunami of short sales and foreclosures, is simply this: that anybody who bought in the last 2 to 3 years has got significant equity in their home. Now, if they bought 5, 10 years ago, they got a ton of equity in their home. And most of the people that when they bought, they put down, a significant amount towards their down payment, 10, 20, 30% or greater. And guess what? Also in the DMV area, over the last few years, about 1 out of 5 home buyers is buying for cash. If you own your house free and clear and you have a federal layoff, you're not worried about going to foreclosure because you don't have a mortgage. The difference with the 2008 market is you had a ton of predatory loan programs that were out there between 2000, let's say maybe 2003 and 2006, 2007. And, I was in that market. I saw that market. You had just ridiculous loans that simply are not done anymore today. 100% financing, interest-only loans, stated income loans where a buyer could go in there and say, yeah, I know what, I make this much money. There'd be no verifications, no documentation. As long as the buyer stated this is what they made and had the willingness to sign some paperwork and, oh yeah, they had a freaking pulse, they would get a loan. 100% finance. Typically, these were interest only. So when you make your mortgage payment, you're not paying anything down to principal. It just stays and remains the same. I even saw negative amortization loans where a buyer was given 3 choices for their monthly payment. The higher amount would be fully amortized, where they would pay interest and they'd pay something towards principal, like a normal 30-year loan that we're used to. The lower payment right below that would be interest only, where they're just, once again, paying interest, nothing towards principal. And believe it or not, an actual lower payment where they were actually adding on principal to their loan every month. And this is just an absolute recipe for disaster. There were a ton of people who had those loans. They should never have been able to get those loans. And when the market corrected, guess what? Values dropped. The amount that they owed on the property was the same or more, and they couldn't afford to sell the property. And ultimately, what ended up happening is there was a huge purge of properties back on the market, either in the way of a foreclosure or a short sale. There's nothing like that that's going to take place anytime soon. The vast amount of buyers who I've worked with over the last 16, 17 years, since '08, have been high quality buyers that had good income, qualified to purchase, also had high down payments in most cases, great credit, fully documented loans, and guess what? They were fixed, so they weren't jumping all over the place like an adjustable rate. So, these type of loans have a very low rate of foreclosure. So don't expect to see a huge amount of foreclosures hitting the market in the DMV anytime soon. And the 6th key insight is the local economy is still strong. Housing follows jobs, and this region still has jobs. Unemployment remains low in the DMV at right around 4%. You've got the Amazon HQ2 expansion, as well as many jobs in tech, as well as biotech hubs throughout the DMV. So unless we see like mass layoffs, not just at the federal level, but also in the private sector as well, and us going into a full-blown recession, I still believe that real estate will remain strong. And while it's not collapsing at all, I don't expect that, there's no question it's correcting, which does give people opportunities, especially home buyers, for the first time in quite some time. So if you're considering a move in the DMV in 2025 and you want to time your move perfectly, then you just got to check out this video here, where we talk about some of the biggest pricing mistakes to be made by home sellers in 2025. If you'd like some customized help with your own real estate situation, go ahead, scan that QR code on your screen, set up the Calendly appointment with me, where we can get on a Google Meet one-on-one for maybe 15, 30 minutes, help you out. We'd really love that opportunity. Thanks once again, everybody, and I will see you next week.